Hey friends, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be discussing something that I think most would probably just like to best leave to their grieving families. Death. Well, not necessarily death, but burial. I know that you think you're going to live forever, but one day, hopefully 120 years from now, Bezrat Hashem, your Iron Man suit that you've been walking around in is going to wear out and have to go back to the earth. There's just no other way about it. I know that it's kind of a sensitive subject, it's something that most people would rather not talk about, but the fact of the matter is that tomorrow's just not promised. I mean, as I sit here right now, a meteorite could come and crash through my skull at any moment, so nothing's absolutely certain. I had an experience with near premature death a little while ago when gas flooded my apartment. I was actually asleep at the time, and my cat smelled the gas, thought something was crazy, and woke me up by clawing at my feet. And if he hadn't have woken me up or we wouldn't have gotten out of there, I would have been added to that statistics of premature death. With this in mind, I think it's very important to talk about having some kind of plan in place for when you die. It doesn't have to be an actual will and testament and legal documents and all that. You know, you can even start with having a couple notes scribbled in crayon on a cocktail napkin. That's a good start. But why do we need to start talking about this? There are a few reasons. Number one, so your family isn't left on the hook whenever they're not in their right mind because they're grieving you, trying to figure out what the heck it is that you wanted. Did you know that the average cost of an American funeral currently runs between 6 and 10 grand? And that's kind of lowballing the figure. So, why so expensive? Let's break it down. Well, first you have the cost of your casket, which averages about $2,300. Then you have the funeral director's basic services fee, which runs about $1,500. Add on top of that body preservation or embalming, which runs about another $600. Combine that with the funeral service and the viewing, which tacks on about another $1,000. Then you can tack on miscellaneous fees, which is like paperwork, hearse usage, all of that. That can run roughly about $600. And you're not even buried yet. The plot in an average graveyard runs about $1,000. The headstone or grave marker will run anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. Digging the hole to put you in the ground, or opening the grave as they call it, is about another $1,000. And the burial vault, you know, the casket for your casket, that'll run anywhere from about $700 to about another $1,000. You know, if the ceiling collapsed tomorrow and chas v'shalom, you didn't let your next of kin know what you wanted exactly, there's a chance that they could be taken to the cleaners because they didn't know what you wanted and they didn't want to come off cheap.
But just because we're bereaved doesn't make us sad!
Sir, please lower your voices.
Here are a few things to consider. The average markup of a casket in America is about 289%. No state requires embalming for every death. Some funeral homes require refrigeration or embalming if the body is viewed, but some will allow for a private viewing even if you're not embalmed. The rules surrounding burial vaults or grave liners, that's completely up to the cemeteries. Some of the main reasons why they would have those rules in place is so that the carcinogenic embalming fluid that they pumped into you doesn't leach into the water tables. Also, so that the ground doesn't cave in and make it harder for them to mow your grave. Some cemeteries don't require grave liners, vaults, or even caskets. Here's the second reason you might want to start thinking about your last wishes: the legacy that you leave on the planet that you just left. Did you know that in the United States every year we bury enough steel in the form of caskets to recreate the Golden Gate Bridge? That's about 64,500 tons of steel that we just put into the ground. We also use enough concrete in the form of grave vaults and liners to build a 2-lane highway that stretches from Detroit to New York. We also bury about 20 million board feet of hardwood in the form of caskets. And that number is actually down from past years because they're making them thinner in order to save money. We also dump about 827,000 gallons of formaldehyde into the ground in the form of an embalmed body buried. Despite all of this, none of these actual traditions of traditional burial are A, traditional, or B, legally required. In recent decades, people have actually called on to have a more environmentally conscious way of burying their dead. This is either called green burial or natural burial. Green burial is a form of burial in which no artificial products are used. Everything is biodegradable and the body is not embalmed. Also, the cemeteries where people are buried are free of environmentally toxic herbicides and pesticides. Another benefit of having a green burial or natural burial, in addition to the environmental part, is also the economics of it. An average green burial runs between $1,000 to $4,000. Most of that is paperwork, transport, and your actual plot. You know, even with this new form of burial taking off, many don't even know that it's available, let alone legal, and let alone that a funeral home would let you do it. Even fewer know that logistically you could actually do this without the help of a funeral home, though people would probably call you a weird hippie. Something that struck me as funny about green burial or natural burial is that it's essentially traditional Jewish burial. Jewish burial forbids the use of embalming on the body, and all of the materials used in burial must be completely 100% biodegradable. A traditional Jewish casket doesn't even have screws or nails because everything needs to be broken down naturally, completely. Whichever method you choose, please choose one because you owe it to your loved ones to make a decision on this while you're still alive. Do the research and the shopping now so that they won't have to whenever they're grief-stricken, not in their right mind, and susceptible to be taken advantage of. If that's your final wish, you just saved them a lot of decisions, heartache, and money. So how do you get started today to plan your inevitable demise? One way is to research which post-mortem arrangements best reflect the legacy that you'd like to leave. A really helpful way of doing this is researching burial methods and keeping in mind their spiritual, economic, and environmental implications. One helpful tool I found is a website called Get Your Shit Together, or gyst.com. Despite the somewhat crude name, they have lots of helpful checklists, questions that you didn't even think to ask yourself, and all kinds of things you need to know in order to make plans for your final destination. It seems creepy to be talking about this right now, especially for a young person, and death really isn't a part of your thought process. But trust me, you'll feel better knowing that you have all of this out of the way, just in case something tragic were to happen and you were going to leave behind people to inevitably make these decisions on your behalf. So be blessed and shalom.